All right. So as we're growing and we're looking at our Amazon sales, we got to look at, what are those core fundamentals? Because, whether you're just getting started or you've been doing it for years, we constantly have to sharpen the saw and find ways to make our listings better. So I'm really excited to have on my Amazon guy, Stephen Pope, to come on and share with us some tips on how you can better manage your listings so that way you're getting better conversions, more sales, and hopefully Amazon's giving you more impressions, which just feeds the algorithm and that flywheel keeps on moving. So Stephen, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yes. So super excited to have this conversation and go into all this. So if you could just share a little bit about your background and how you got into the world of e-commerce and Amazon and all that fun stuff.
You bet. So ever since I was a kid, I always loved to sell things. And the first thing I ever sold online was a Magic the Gathering card called a Sliver Queen, if you're familiar. And
no idea, but
yeah. So I sold it for like $20 as a 11, 12-year-old kid, and sold chess equipment growing up. So it's always been in the blood. I actually went into a career as a television reporter, did that for a couple of years. Loved being a reporter, hated being in the news industry. And so I looked for a new career, as many Amazon sellers eventually do, right? They are like, they didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be an Amazon seller.
Right.
It was usually, don't like what I'm doing currently, don't want to work for the man. So they look for something. Well, so I did corporate marketing for about 8 years and worked for 4 failed startups along the way. And then one day, one of the last failed startups I worked for laid me off, and I was like, well, cool. I've been doing marketplaces as a marketplace director on the corporate side. I've side hustle consulted for 3 or 4 years. Why don't I just, put my toe in the water and do this full time? So had a conversation with the wife in the laundry room. Hey, what would it take to have a real company and do this? And she says, how do people normally introduce you? And I'm like, I don't know. They just say, I just got this Amazon guy. So that's how the agency name came about. And the rest is history. And now we have 80 clients and 17 employees. And it's a blast. We're grinding every day to grow sales for our clients.
Awesome. I'm sure you probably picked up a few tips along the way that hopefully we can all learn from.
One of the nice things is that my brand policy is we share all our trade secrets openly. So we're happy to share everything we do.
Awesome. Well, this will be a good conversation. So let me just go back in time here again real quick. So your first sale was on eBay. Did you feel like you were kind of hooked into the whole process at that point?
I loved it. And I didn't know at the time how much of a big deal it was, but at one point in time, a couple years later, I ended up buying some dude's old Magic the Gathering set for $250. Call it retail arbitrage if you want. And I started hawking those cards and made $5,000.
Oh wow!
So yeah, that was really helpful at the time, because if you don't know, television reporters make nothing. They are one of the most underpaid, overeducated class of individuals, and probably even lesser paid than teachers, for perspective. I had sold a lot of those cards just to get by during my time as a television reporter. So I was doing retail arbitrage. I don't know, what was that? It was in 2008 to 2010. So 10, 12 years ago.
Oh, wow. Was it even called retail arbitrage back then?
No, not at all. Nor would I have ever even thought of it at the time, right? That's just what it was by definition. I bought low and sold high.
Wow. So you're buying to sell on eBay or on Amazon or both?
Well, eBay at the time.
Right.
I've never tried to sell a Magic the Gathering card on Amazon, because by the time that came around, it was inundated with people who are way more sophisticated and card sorters and, a big collection in the back garage, right? So I was a small timer just doing it just to get by. Like most of us who start retail arbitrage, we're looking for an extra $1,000 a month of income or thereabouts. So.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's nice just having a little extra money, but then you get kind of hooked on it. Like I remember my first sale was, I got into the idea of Amazon, and it was called retail arbitrage at the time. This was 2015. And I went to like a Walgreens, and they were clearing out their summer items. and there was like the blue freezer packs, and that you keep your cans cold,
Sure.
and bought that and a few other things. I sold one of those freezer packs. I remember it was the day it arrived into a warehouse, and I was like, wait, this is actually happening. Someone actually bought something I put up for sale, and I was kind of hooked ever since. So, all right. So this is gonna be a fun conversation getting into kind of those more fundamental things, because I think it's important that we all really think on these fundamentals, because sometimes we can say, oh, I know this because I've been selling for 4 years or whatever the case is. But it's always good to fine tune your skills, whether you're brand new or you've been doing this for a while. And so let's talk a little bit about, what would you say are your kind of core fundamentals with listing optimization?
Everything that you do on Amazon can be boiled down to two things.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, traffic generation, and number two, conversion. And if it doesn't fall under one of those two buckets, it will not grow your sales. So that's the high level answer. And as we go into the granular details of like, hey, what's my 30-second trick I can do today to increase my sales? We could go all the way down to the keyword level and talk about making sure you've got keywords in every location known to man. And people know that, hey, long titles do good.
Mm-hmm.
People know that I got to optimize my bullet points. They've been around that block, but there's still a bunch of practices that people don't think about, right? When you optimize your listing, did you know that your A+ content, every single photo in your A+ content can have 100 characters of alt text? And that's 100 characters of keyword juice that you can add to your listing. And mind you, Amazon claims they don't index A+ content, but I know they're big fat liars, because I've put Spanish on one photo in A+ content. Didn't have Spanish anywhere else, not in the title, not in the bullets, not in the back end search term field, and I indexed it for Spanish. So, so those small things that aren't really discussed, like keywords in the back end of your A+ content alt text field, they make a difference. And that's something you could do today with 5 minutes of effort and start indexing for new keywords.
Okay. Interesting. So let's take a step back. And, as much as we say like, oh, okay, everyone gets the title and bullets, but I got to remind myself, and I think a lot of other people kind of, maybe they think they know, but maybe there's more they could do. So what are you looking at when you're looking at titles and bullets, before we start getting into maybe some of the ninja tricks like the alt text?
So one of the things I think about with the changes to Amazon, because Amazon's constantly changing, right? And
Always.
sometimes right. And I think it's fascinating that you say that there's sometimes some things that we take for granted or don't know or don't understand as Amazon changes, or some back to the basics concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell you, I learned something new about Amazon every single day without fail, right? I make no claim to know everything about Amazon. And the only reason that I feel like we are successful as Amazon sellers and as well as consultants is because we go out there and we troubleshoot every single day. We have to test things. So the reason why I mention this is because I think titles are going to have a really big revolution here in the next 6 months. Last year, in the June of 2019, Amazon came out and said, hey, we're going to limit everybody's titles to 50 characters. And not even 2 weeks later, they backed off that, right?
Right.
And so I had every single client in my portfolio at my Amazon guy freak out. Everyone was freaking out because that would have been a big effort. Thousands of SKUs would have had to have been truncated. Well, okay, it's 2020 now, and the last 90 days, everybody's focused on logistics and supply chain woes. Well, I've started to see some of those categories limit to 50 characters again. Supplements would be the main one that I've seen the biggest hit to. And in the last 10 days, I saw a bunch of words start to get banned or suppressing your listings if you use them in your titles. You can no longer use the word gifts in your title. Anniversary, that's out. Holidays and other birthday type keywords, also on the outs. So while I know your question was more about like, hey, give me the basics of titles, I do want to say it's whether you're doing the basics or not, you need to believe or predict that you're going to have to change your titles this year. I think that the title count of 50 characters is going to come category by category, and it's going to eventually hit everybody.
Gotcha. Interesting. So what categories are you seeing that in now?
Supplements was the first one that I saw, and that's the one where it seems to be the most affected. I'm not seeing this in every single category, or even the ones where I do see it in. I do have clients that have some of their products being affected, but not others. So it's not like a full rollout at this stage. But anything that's in their target areas, beauty, topicals, I think are higher risk. Anything that's medically related, I think, is also at higher risk as well. I think categories like home goods are probably the safest category that won't be impacted by changes. However, those words that I just mentioned, like gifts and holiday mentions and anniversary, that hit everybody.
Yeah. And now, is that something that is more for new products coming in, or if you're trying to make changes, or is that affecting existing listings?
Yes, it's both. So any of the new rules that come into place, Amazon will always tell you what the rules are. Now, mind you, it's sometimes vague and hard to follow them, right?
Right.
But often the case, Amazon will come out and say, hey, here's the rule. And then not for 12 months. So in some cases, they don't enforce it. They just tell you the rule, but they don't enforce it. Then that 12-month marker comes, and this is, expedited by certain topics, right? But let's say 12 months is the average, or whenever they do it. 12 months comes by, and then all of a sudden they start to slowly enforce it. So I have listings. I side hustle a brand called Momster. I sell funny wine glasses. I use it to test all of my crazy ideas for my clients. And this is why I knew about the gifts language, because I'm in the home and goods category. And all of a sudden I had certain parentages that were affected by this, but not other ones. And one of the interesting things is that if the problem was in the parent title, not in the children, but in the parent title, it affected the entire list of variations. So you have to be careful with your parent titling as well. And most people don't spend a lot of time on parent titles. So there's some things to keep in mind there. One of the interesting caveats about parent titles too is that when you're being found in search, often the case your parent title will show there. Or if you're in like that top 100 list, your parent title can show there, or show you all of those lists. Or if you click on the variations sold by sellers list, you'll see the parent title there as well. So there's a lot of things that people don't think about when they optimize. They have to go back and say, oh, this actually does matter. Parent titles matter.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah, it's yeah, I've heard about the gifts thing and some other words. So that's interesting. Now, let's get outside of some of the newer stuff. Let's go back, track even farther back. What would you say to someone who says, how do I figure out what to put in my title?
I think that you have to follow the brand guidelines within reason. So Amazon's guidelines.
I like that, so, within reason.
Right. So they want you to have your brand name in the front of your title. Does that help you sell on Amazon? Not at all. Most likely, unless you have a great brand name, or
like Nike,
or you're $1 million brand, right? So if you have made a really poor choice on the name of your brand, I would recommend to put it at the last part of your title. But at a later point, Amazon will force you to rename it. So, for example, if you have your product name, its attributes, bunch of keywords, by brand name. That's the kind of concept I'm suggesting. Now, but to be clear, that's against Amazon's policy. They want brand name first, always. Following that, I think the first 5 words of your title are super important. And, there's a lot of information out there about trying to create your Google URL, 5-word shorter URL. And so if you put a hyphen after your first 5 words, you can somehow program Google to give you that URL for keywords. So I've been kind of testing that right now. And I've been trying to find out if it would change current listings if you set that URL. Kind of jury's out on that right now for me personally. But inside of that title, you need to define what your product is, and you got to give them the product name, right? And then following that, I would keyword stuff within, using that term again, phrase again, within reason, right? And so you want to have your title as long as possible, but you definitely can't go over that 200 characters. And I think you're going to have to create a 50 character version at some point. But until Amazon forces your specific ASIN to do that, I would maximize somewhere around 170 to 180 characters.
Okay. Now, is Amazon alerting these as quality alerts, and from what you're seeing, or is it you just kind of like all of a sudden your sales tank?
If sales are going down, it's usually because there's an alert present. So you'll see suppressed listing, you'll see the quality alert, like you mentioned. Usually, it's a suppression. In other cases, though, they'll lock your catalog detail page. There won't be a quality alert. There won't be a sales problem. But for you to make further changes, you'll have to adhere to their brand guidelines and then send them proof.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Hopefully they relax some of that, because some of those things are like what the product actually is. I know what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it so people don't put, their spatula is a great Christmas gift or something
And
like that.
that seems where that's the hammer in June of 2020.
Yeah, but there are products that are legitimately gifts for certain reasons or whatever
Yep.
the case is.
Like say a Christmas mug.
Right, exactly. You're putting the name of the holiday for a reason. Or the mug says, happy birthday. Well, birthday's on there.
That's going to be a challenge. And so I think you can ticket it and try and ask Amazon to release that policy. But for the most part, this is all algorithmically, I can't even say that word right now, based. It's the computer crawling it. So nobody's reporting you. Nobody's looking at your listings. Although you can report people for violating things that you've been in trouble for. And Amazon probably will look at those listings. But it seems to be systematic, right? So like those words that I just mentioned, or parentage violations and having too many wrong child variations in your listing, those things have been enforced even a year ago on some sellers. And now they're just getting more aggressive about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things in my experience with Amazon, it's like sometimes they get real heavy-handed and then they kind of back off a little bit, and then they get heavy-handed and back off a little bit. Try to figure out the mid-level. So I guess for people, if it's happening to them, try not to freak out too much, because at the end of the day, they might realize they overdid it, because at the same time too, they want sales. So if they start seeing sales dropping, there's category managers who their job is now on the line. And so they're going to be fighting for maybe changes internally, at least is the way I kind of understand it there.
I agree with you, but I do have a nuanced opinion on that. And that would be, I think Amazon doesn't care where they get the sale from. And so they know that if they take their shotgun out and kill 5 million listings, they're still going to have the same sales. And so the shoot first, ask questions later mentality, hey, my listing's been taken down and yanked, and it's, or hey, I've got this pesticides gating. None of it's logical. None of it's logical whatsoever. So yes, Amazon is in the business of generating sales, but because they're entering this maturity phase in the product cycle, I think they're caring less about where they get the sales from. They just want protected sales, and the sophisticated sellers that can navigate around these problems. They're happier allowing that than Joe Schmo garage side hustler who got slapped on the wrist but can't figure out how to navigate it. They're cool with that guy failing.
Got it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about for our folks who are now trying to figure out like how they navigate their listing. And we talked a little bit about making sure it's compliant, following at least whether it be the spirit or the letter of the law within reason, of course. But then what are some other things we should be looking at on our listing before we start getting into some of your more advanced tactics?
So let's finish the title conversation, I guess.
Sure.
So I would recommend you have the product name, the keywords, and then a size attribute of some kind or a color variation if you're using it. And then I like to put those in parentheses at the very far right of the listing. So if you were circumventing or circulating through all those variations on a listing, you'd see the title be pretty consistent in the front end, and at the back end, you'd see the changes between the variations. So that affects a lot of people who are using parentages and variations and whatnot. As we get to bullet points, I think that this is a common practice. This won't be news to your listeners, but capitalize the first couple of words as a summary statement going into your bullet points. And that way, somebody who's got 30 seconds is going to make their buying decision. They'll read the 5 highlighted bullet points in less than 30 seconds, say, cool, buy. And then after that, have proper case for the rest of the sentences on those bullet points. But you definitely should be maximizing these fields as well. There's another 200 characters times 5 each bullet point that can be maximized. And keywords should definitely be massaged in there, not stuffed, but massaged in there.
Right. Yeah, it should be something people can read, but you should definitely make sure to incorporate for the people reading that the algorithm can also read it in a favorable way too.
And as your titles get butchered by Amazon coming in and saying, go down to 50 characters or whatever policy they tell you to make a change for, those bullet points, a little bit more free range to make some of those things. So add the word gifts to your bullet points for your auntie and uncle and whatnot there. You can also use emojis in your bullet points. This is not a tactic I would use in every category. Like if you're selling medical equipment and you're using emojis, I think you're an idiot.
Right.
But if you're selling a fun gift item or something whimsical, go Google Amazon emojis for sellers, and you should definitely use that to add a little bit of color into the listing. We've talked about text. We haven't talked about photos yet.
Okay.
And photos, there is such a wide-ranging topics to do or get to optimize for photos. So quick hits, top main photo, you need to have it on a white background. That's obvious. But how you crop that photo really matters, right? You should have no space or as limited space as possible at the top and the bottom of the photo. What this does is it makes the product as big as possible on the search page. If you haven't got this correct, forget the rest of the photo tips. That one's so important. You should start there until you got that one right. Forget the rest. Other secondary photos, you should definitely have lifestyle. I think that's the most missed mark photo opportunity on Amazon today. I think a lot of sellers are doing infographics and having text on images to explain the top features, which is kind of similar to what the bullet points are supposed to do. But let's say you sell a cover for a generator and that cover has a zipper. Well, saying you have a zipper in the bullet points is okay. But if you have a giant arrow that says this zipper is the coolest zipper ever, and you have a giant arrow that points to it on your infographic, and you have a guarantee the zipper will never fail and it's waterproof, cool. Well, that should be in an infographic showing your product off. And if you got that, but you don't have a guy lifting that generator up with his bare hands and carrying it with a cover on it, you're missing a lifestyle photo opportunity. So photos can help with conversion rates. You can have 7 photos or 6 photos with a video, and video would be the next topic.
Okay, what would you put in the video?
So video is easier said than done. This is probably one that a lot of sellers ignore and get to at a very last resort. And video is something that if you don't have a production quality camera, or let's say you don't have $1,000 to drop on a good video, just pull your cell phone out, take a 30 to 60 second clip and show and tell the product. Voice matters. I think you do have to have a voiceover. And I do think that simply having a video of any kind to show banana for scale is what you're looking to do in the video. And if you do that, your conversion rates will go up, regardless of the quality of the video. And it's because that video is not going to get a lot of hits, not a lot of views. But just simply showing you have a video makes the customer feel like, oh, this is a legitimate product.
Okay, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, because you could do, slideshows with pictures. I mean, you could hire somebody on Fiverr to do something. I was talking to somebody locally it was more about YouTube, but she was saying like, oh, if I was to do stuff on my YouTube channel, it's going to be $3,000 a minute for production. I'm like, then you're looking in the wrong place. Video should not cost you that much, especially when we all have a portable studio in our pocket.
But let's say, so I got a product on my desk here, and it's a chirp wheel. And if I wanted to show this product off, I would go find some yoga hot looking woman and just say, use the product, film the camera, voice it over, talk about the features of it, and tell us why this is going to make your back feel better than it's ever felt in your life. And quite frankly, that's actually a truthful testimonial on my part. That thing does work. And I use it every day.
Nice.
So that's, and that's the kind of conversation you can have on camera. And that took 15 seconds, right? That's the sort of thing you can put in your video, and you don't have to be the most verbose, perfect sounding individual to pull this off.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you can hire somebody on Fiverr for probably $20 to do a voiceover that sounds really professional. And so there's all kinds of different ways you could do this. So cool. All right, so let's start getting more into some of your ninja tactics. Like you were mentioning the alt text field. So are you using that as almost kind of like another? Well, actually, before we get into that, let's talk about the back-end keywords real quick.
So back-end keywords is probably after title and photos. That'd be my third pick for most important field to get correct on Amazon. The search term field will have capacity to index for things that you cannot put in front-facing copy. So there's a list of things that I recommend people do when they set their keywords, and I will put this list is public on my website today at myamazonguy.com/SEO. Mm-hmm. And so in this list, I will walk you through everything you need to do in your search term field. So first of all, do not use any commas. This is anti everything that SEO has taught for Google and your website for decades to come, or however long we've been doing SEO. And it's a very unusual thing. The second thing is don't repeat any words in the search term field. So let's say you were selling a dog bowl. Well, if you were going to put the word dog in your search term field and you were going to put every word for the word bowl, you would only put the word dog, bowl, maybe you got the Spanish word for bowl, and maybe you've got big and small and some classifying adjectives, or stainless steel or washable or dishwasher proof, whatever it might be in that series, right? I like to use Helium-10 for my keyword research. There's many tools out there, Jungle Scout and others that you can use. And if your listing's brand new, I recommend you go to your competitors' listings and look them up in Cerebro and in Helium-10, and then compare and contrast them, export that data over into Frankenstein, and then parse it. And they will remove all the duplicate words, they will remove all the commas, and that will give you your, what I like to call the word cloud. From there, you can take that word cloud and cut it down. So that word cloud is probably going to start out at 3,000 characters. You need to cut that down to 250. The nice thing, though, is that the first part of that word cloud will be the most important, and all of your high-value keywords will be at the front of it. So if you're launching a product, you've never been on Amazon before with this product, that's the way I would do it. If you have been selling on Amazon and this product's been around and it's a good seller and it's got 100 plus units per month already, very different tactics involved to get done for your search term field. Amazon in the fall of 2019 came out with what I like to call the pink text update. And this is where they tell you, and you have to be brand registered to see this. You go to the brand dashboard and you go to the pink text section, if you will, and they will show you any word that is not adding value, and it's in pink text. And this is basically any word that's in your title, potentially also your bullet points, does not need to be in your search term field. This frees up a lot of space for your search term field. So that's why when I started mentioning Spanish for dog bowl, you do probably need to have at least 3 Spanish words in every search term field on the back end today. And that's because you have so much more room to work with, because you aren't using duplicate words, you're not using commas, and you're not using words in your title after it's a listing that's been around the block. And so you now need to put in some new phrases. Misspellings is the next biggest one. The search term field should be chock full of misspellings, especially the top 3 misspellings of your main keyword. That's a mouthful. I realize I went into a deep dive there, so I'll pause there, Kevin. Where else do you want to go on that?
Yeah, so how are you figuring out the misspellings?
I also like to use the keyword tools like Helium-10 for that. They will show you all of the high-level impressions for those misspellings. If an impression count for misspellings not over 100, ignore it. Doesn't matter. But the misspellings are usually not misspellings. They're usually typos, right? So they're like, oops, I mistyped that by 1 letter and on the keyboard, and so a lot of people do that when they type it in. So if you can rank for those misspellings, it'll be easier because your competition's not doing it.
That's a great tip. Now, one debate I've heard in the past is, now, one, you wouldn't necessarily want to put the same word that's in your title in your back end, but I've heard people say you might want to put a plural because you would potentially index for the title and rank for the title more so than you would, or sorry, for the capitalization, not the capitalization, the plural. So if you had the word bottle, you could have bottles in the back end keyword. What are your thoughts on plurals?
I think Amazon's been definitive on this question. I feel very comfortable saying definitively that you do not need to do that. And if you have bottle in the title, you do not need the plural in the keywords.
Okay.
Now, if we were talking about platypus and platypus I might have a slightly different take on that. But just a simple S on the end, no, don't need it.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so then now you've kind of mentioned for those that are brand or those that have the A plus content, you have the ability to add some additional backend keywords in a sense.
Yes,
and with the alt text.
And in my opinion, this is the most underutilized field, even on sophisticated seller accounts. Let's say I onboard 100 clients. Out of 100 clients, only 2 of them are using these fields correctly. That's how misunderstood it is, in my opinion. It's like a 2% of listings out there are using keywords and they're all text today.
Okay.
So what you've got, so let's say your A plus content's really shiny and it's got 30 photos on it. You got your product grid. You got 5 photos in your product grid to show your 5 top sellers and your attributes that you're comparing between them. And by the way, that product grid is, in my opinion, the most important part of A plus content. Product grids are going to allow you to go between your listings, and you can increase your average order value because people are going to buy multiple products. It will also allow you to do what I like to call the good, better, best modeling. So if you've got a good, better, best version of your product grid, compare and contrast. So this good product's got 3 features, this better product's got 6, and my best product got freaking 20 features, right? So you can compare and contrast which one works best for you. But going back to the alt text conversation, so let's say you've got 30 photos on your A plus content because you're really sophisticated. You got lots of content. That's 30 photos times 100 characters. That is 100 characters times 30 photos of keywords to put into the back end. And you could have diversity in those keywords, or you could have repetition in those keywords. So you could have the same keyword in 30 photos. You could have 30 different sets of 100 unique characters. All of that is valuable.
Okay. Interesting. What other ninja tricks or just in general things would you recommend people keep an eye out for?
Well, I think one of the new hot tips would be virtual bundling. This has started to roll out to almost everybody's account recently. And we've been trying to understand it at My Amazon Guy to figure out, like, hey, how could we use this appropriately? And basically what we've ascertained so far is you can't do a virtual bundle of a 2 or a 3 pack of the same ASIN. So that's out. You can't actually advertise sponsored products for virtual bundles, so that's out. So you're going to create a virtual bundle of like maybe your main seller product and an accessory together, and now you don't have to kit it yourself and send it into FBA. So I think that's something worth checking out, and that's going to add another ASIN to your catalog. You can, however, use sponsored brands for virtual bundles.
Well, that's a good tip there, because I like having additional products. I do take, if I have, let's say, product A, B, and C, put them together. That's what I've done for years. I've been kind of nervous on the idea of virtual bundling because I have more control and, a variety of factors.
It doesn't save you any money to virtual bundle. So that's why, because the same FBA fees apply and you still are going to offer a discount. So it will say regular price slashed out bundle price. So it does give you some couponing options, right? So if you've got a low margin product and a high margin product and you bundle them together, boom, you're making more money if you can sell that kit, right? That's a good idea. But if you have the ability to package it yourself and bundle it and you think it's going to be a good kit, you probably should do that anyway.
Okay. If you have 2 products that you put together as a virtual bundle, and let's say they're both combined under £1, let's just use it as an example here. Are you being charged 1 fulfillment fee or 2 fulfillment fees for each of them?
2 fulfillment fees.
Okay.
No cost savings.
Got it. So for me, there is the cost savings in doing it that way. So it helps me realize maybe that's not the best idea. However, if you have a large portfolio of products,
larger the better, the better
this. If you start seeing certain certain combinations work best, then you maybe take it to the next level and start sending some in as FBA inventory if, the numbers work out favorably.
So that's definitely something to check out. The other thing I would say is Parentage is under attack today, and you need to do some serious reviews of Amazon Parentage policy right now. And there are 5 different typical high value types of parentages and variation themes, and they're color, size, quantity, material, and flavor. And my favorite parentage type is color, without a doubt, because you see the picture of the item. It's my favorite. But if you're trying to use a color variation theme with a size product, you're going to get in trouble. And I'm seeing crackdown. You're seeing policy violations. And also for the first time, I actually saw one account get suspended for abuse on variation.
Interesting.
Parentage. Yes. And what's really scary about this, let's say you've got a parentage with 48 variations. Would you like to guess how many violations you get when you have a parentage problem?
So you're saying it's 48, not just
48 freaking violations on your account. So be careful.
So be very careful, and know that every category can sometimes have slightly different acceptable variation categories. So definitely check that.
10% of my clients have been hit with a violation in the last 90 days.
Okay, so definitely something to keep in mind. Well, this has been an interesting conversation. So if somebody wanted to dive down the rabbit hole a little bit more with Stephen, where would they go?
myamazonguy.com. So, 2 things we talked about today was A+ content. We do sell A+ content service for $500. You can find that on our service on our website. And if you need to book a coaching call anytime, you can get in touch with me. Just hit that book a coaching call button at the top of myamazonguy.com.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much, Stephen.
Kevin, it was a pleasure being on your podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care.